Hey everyone, you've all seen me make fun of the Weinstein brothers before, and you've also seen me make fun of Tucker Carlson. Well, today it's time for the ultimate crossover, since Bret Weinstein went on Tucker's show to play smart person pretend times. Should we make fun of them both some more? I think we should, so let's get started. If you are not aware of the fact that Bret Weinstein is a disgusting fraud, you should watch this video where I prove it. And if you're not aware that Tucker is a complete moron who doesn't understand 9th grade biology, you should watch this video where I prove it. But if you're up to speed with both of these undeniable facts, let's check out the two of them having a super smarty pants conversation on Tucker's channel last month. The video is called Tucker and Bret Weinstein Debate Evolution, God's Existence, Israel, and Will AI Gain Consciousness? Will both of them humiliate themselves on every single one of these topics, or will they take turns? Let's find out.
I've been wanting to talk to you for the last year. I went on Joe Rogan's show about a year ago, and I stated that I don't believe in Darwinism. And basically, I think God created people. I don't think it was it's just a matter of belief. And you texted me and said, I'm an actual evolutionary biologist. We need to have this conversation. So,
yes, we all saw you say this insanely dumb thing to Joe Rogan with minimal pushback. Flat earthers say they don't believe in gravity, too. It's fun to laugh at dumb people. Bret did study biology, so he should be able to set you straight here, but something tells me it's not going to go that way, since he's only here to steal your willfully ignorant hillbilly audience. As you can see, Tucker has traded in his Fox News persona for a rustic cabin, fisherman's vest, and a theme that could have been on the Deliverance soundtrack. He should have just tattooed his target demographic on his forehead to save some time.
In any case, no, I did want to have this conversation with you. And let's just say, because evolution is my professional realm,
yes.
I'm sure I could cite you chapter and verse.
Well, you definitely could.
But it's pointless. First of all, that doesn't make me right.
Of course, Bret could lecture you with chapters and verses from the Bible of evolutionism, but that wouldn't make him right. Did you hear that, evolution deniers? You have scripture. Science has scripture. It's all the same, so just relax. Bret, you're supposed to explain principles of biology that children learn in middle school, and conveying them with clarity would indeed make you objectively right. This is going to go very poorly.
You're standing in for a lot of people who have begun to have very profound questions about the story that they've been told about evolution and what its relationship is to biology and, most importantly, to people.
Those people aren't beginning to have questions about anything. They don't even know what evolutionary biology is. They were brainwashed into rejecting science since birth, and hearing people reinforce their ignorance on a huge podcast only makes things worse. On the contrary, once a person who was raised in any fundamentalist religion starts to learn about biology, geology, astronomy, and other sciences, it becomes impossible not to question the baseless religious narratives they've been fed, which is why the world is becoming more secular by the day.
The principle that has allowed us to see all of what we can see, that has allowed us to build all that we have built, that principle is parsimony, and it suggests that this universe is not the product of an intentional creation.
So the Hebrews explained it this way, and the Christians too, that the process is inherent in the description. So the creator is the force that creates and is not himself created.
Bret just got done announcing his disbelief in God, a bold move for this audience, and Tucker says, but wait, I read a story one time. Let's see how this develops.
Our belief in God or gods is a key to human functionality, and it is incumbent on evolutionary biologists to understand in what way that could possibly be true. And this is a responsibility on which I think evolutionists have fallen down. They have treated religious devotion as, frankly, a pathology, and it couldn't possibly be one. It's obviously adaptive. And because it's obviously adaptive, it requires the same seriousness that we point at other structures or processes And so far, there's been very little of that in my field.
Okay, I see the angle. Hey, Jesus folks, I'm one of the good atheists who hates when those stupid evolutionists look down on you. Blind faith in ancient myths is obviously a super awesome adaptation that is key for human functionality, even though I don't have it. And you should all be very proud of yourselves for believing in ridiculous stories for no reason. Tuck?
I don't think it is adaptive. I don't think there's any evidence of that at all. And I should also say that, by the way, and I'll tell you why I think that, but I should say what I said on Rogan was like characteristically inarticulate and imprecise. And I don't have a problem at all with the idea that there's physical evolution, because I think there clearly is.
Right, it's not adaptive because evolution isn't real, but also there is physical evolution, except my worldview relies on there not being evolution. So I'll just ramble incoherently and contradict myself every 3 seconds until you interrupt me.
My problem is with the question of the creation of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a better explanation or a more reasonable explanation that there's just a God that created everything.
Yeah, I mean, the entire body of modern scientific knowledge contradicts what you just said, but vomiting up God did it is totally worth more than all of science. Everybody knows that.
I should say, buried within what I'm saying is a critique of where my field has gotten to. As I think I mentioned to you in a past discussion, I think my field is stuck.
Yeah.
And it's no longer solving big problems. It's focused on producing lots of papers that study some specific, but it's not discovering big new things. And that's not because there isn't lots to be done. It's because it's sort of lost track of how to do it.
Oh, of course, biology has lost its way. Tell us more, oh wise sage. Bret, are you doing an impression of your big brother again? You don't have a field. You are not a biologist in the same way that Eric is not a physicist. Neither of you do research. Neither of you publish in the scientific literature. You are not scientists. You are podcasters cosplaying as scientists. So when you whine about some field of science being stagnant, whether it's biology or physics, it's like the guy manning the stadium concession stand complaining about how much the team sucks now. They do things you can't even imagine. Sell your pretzels and shut the fuck up. Evolutionary biology is making advancements all the time. You should read up a bit. And the only thing more pathetic than this diatribe is Tucker nodding along. Oh yeah, totally. Biology is stuck. I was thinking the same thing. Tucker can't follow along with an episode of the Magic School Bus, so the idea that he has any fucking clue what is happening or has ever happened in evolutionary biology is peak comedy.
But I am a champion of the basic Darwinian paradigm, which I think we have lost sight of. In fact, evolutionary biologists in the middle of the 20th century overly narrowed our understanding of Darwinism and have blinded us to what it's really trying to tell us about ourselves.
Yeah, Darwinism got so super narrow in the middle of the 20th century, or actually it evolved into neo-Darwinism, and the modern synthesis expanded into another dozen different evolutionary mechanisms and laid the foundation for all the astounding biotechnology we use today. So the precise opposite of what you just said. Bret, you're shockingly clueless about the history of biology, even for a pretend biologist.
But it sounds to me like you believe in a universe in which biological evolution happens.
Yes.
Okay, so there's no disagreement.
And that people adapt, and that human behavior is, to a huge extent, a function of physical reality, of biology. And like we do certain things, we have certain attitudes because of biology, because of nature. Like these are imperatives of nature.
Tucker wants to make sure to remind everyone that he doesn't know what evolution means. People adapt. I'm used to going to Cracker Barrel every week after Sunday Mass, but then it closed, so now I go to Waffle House instead. See, I adapted. That's evolution. That's not what evolution means, dumbass. And saying that human behavior is a product of biology also has nothing to do with evolution, because you believe that your God made humans exactly how we are. You're saying that you don't believe in evolution while pretending to believe in evolution. Pick a lane.
I believe in the existence of the supernatural. I've experienced it, I've seen it, it's real, it exists outside of nature, outside of all the laws that we think we're subject to, and it acts on us.
You've seen it, huh? Funny how it's never atheists who see this stuff, isn't it? Only the people desperately deluding themselves into believing that the supernatural exists and cares deeply about us. How does it act on us, Tuck? Can you show us with an experiment?
I'm not arguing that a materialist scientific worldview that excludes the supernatural is a better way to live. One of the things I think atheists have done particularly badly, and one of the reasons that I don't call myself an atheist.
Well, you already told everyone you don't believe in God, so not calling yourself an atheist is just you admitting that you don't know what words mean. But this is just more pathetic pander. Naughty atheists are too naughty. People of faith are way better, obviously.
Is that there is no demonstrated case in which, an atheist civilization has thrived. In fact, we have many examples in which they have spectacularly collapsed. And in fact, the things that presently threaten our civilization include a great many, atheist ideas, like, you can just up and change your sex if you feel that you're trapped in the wrong body.
There is no God but us.
Wow, we made it a whole 16 minutes without bringing up trans people. That's a new record for these jerks. What an astounding pile of stupidity. No examples of an atheist civilization thriving, so we're 0 for 0 then? If all the hyper-religious people would hand over the wheel, I think we would do a lot better than the constant torture and genocide of the past several thousand years. All those crusades and inquisitions and ethnic cleansing of indigenous peoples in the name of one lord or another do set a pretty high bar, but I'm confident in our abilities to not be gigantic pieces of shit. Thanks, Bret. Then, the idea that gender-affirming care for trans people has anything whatsoever to do with atheism is completely delusional. Trans people aren't all atheists, nor are the people who provide them with medical care. You're a fake biologist who doesn't know what sex means, and the idea that trans people transitioning is a threat to our civilization is the most transparently alarmist pile of fecal matter I've ever heard. Oh no, elected medical procedures on 0.1% of the population that don't affect you whatsoever. The horror. Quick, let's blow up another country.
But I want to get more focused on just like the reality of it. Like if there is no supernatural, then like what is all this stuff?
Well,
like what's the other explanation?
What is all this stuff, Bret? What's lightning? What's this weird mammal with a duckbill that lays eggs? Magnets, how do they work? Tucker, you're referring to science. The other explanation, also known as the actual explanation, is science. We've been figuring out what everything is and how it works in a rigidly empirical way for about 500 years now. And guess what? We've been writing this shit down the whole time. Crack open a book and get to learning, dumbass.
I think that the belief in the supernatural is a much more efficient way of encoding hidden truths that you can't readily comprehend. So to give you one example.
Before we get to Bret's example, we have to thank whoever edited this train wreck for providing us with 6 straight seconds of Tucker looking like a complete putz. Nobody wears their deep, unwavering confusion on their face quite like Tucker.
You know what I mean? Like,
you might have a system in which you imagine that the misbehavior of your people, whoever they might be, is going to result in the anger of a god who will punish you with famine.
right.
Okay, that would be supernatural. It's also true that if your people are busy betraying each other, that may threaten the harvest.
Translation: a lot of people are brainless sheep that need to fear punishment from a magic invisible sky daddy in order to behave properly. That's one of the reasons organized religion was invented. This precise realization is what makes millions of people leave their faith every year, usually around the teenage years. Will it work on Tucker?
I think there's a practical effect of doing the right thing, and it's a good thing, right?
Right.
I mean, right. So, but I'm more interested in the question, among others, of like knowing. How do we know things on the basis of no evidence that are true? How do we how do we know?
Well-
but we do know. So that's kind of my point.
Yeah, Tucker isn't biting. His stories are real, and fuck you, Bret, for pretending they're just stories to trick people into being nice to each other. How does Tucker know his special stories are real? Because he knows. Literal toddler logic.
We don't do a good job of talking about intuition. In my opinion, intuition is the product of unconscious processes in the mind. If those unconscious processes are in a zone where you've had a lot of experience, your intuition is liable to be excellent. If those unconscious processes are trying to navigate something where you don't have much experience at all, your intuition will be crude. It's not a supernatural process. It's about the sum total of your experiences and what they are capable of putting together about the world.
Hear that, Tucker? Your intuition regarding any scientific topic is worth less than dirt, because you're a science-illiterate moron. When you reject geologic time, or common descent, or any other objective fact about physical reality, and pretend that you have some legitimate intuitive reason to do so, you are acting like a buffoon. Do you think this'll register, or will he pivot?
Hallow is the world's #1 prayer app. It is the subject of nightly conversation at my dinner table. And Hallow just launched its Conclave prayer challenge that allows you to pray for the Holy Spirit to move within the cardinals and to choose the right pope. It matters whether you're Catholic or not.
Well, that's the hardest pivot I've ever seen. Hey, regressive fundamentalist Christians who I grift off of, get this awesome app so you can help force God to choose the right pope. Not like the crappy pope we just had, who said evolution is true and atheists can go to heaven. He was a stupid buttface. Every pope is necessarily infallible, but not that one. Boy, did he suck. Get it right this time, imaginary Sky Daddy.
Do people ever communicate with each other across distances non-verbally?
Yeah, in fact, one of the funny things about us is that we have a special adaptation in our eyes that allows us to communicate as a hunting party without alerting the thing that we're hunting.
No, I mean out of sight.
Sure.
I'm 500 miles from my spouse, and we have the same thought at the same moment.
No, Bret, not science-y biology stuff that exists. I'm asking you if magic is real. I can't be any more clear about this. Can people do mind magic? And since they can, isn't my magic god real? Okay, go.
Yeah, but I don't think it's supernatural.
How is that natural?
Well, I mean, if I work backwards from my own parallel experiences, my wife and I know each other very, very well. She can detect if my pattern of communication is off.
Fucking hell, it must be torture for Bret to be doing this interview. His goal is nearly impossible to achieve. He has to take every dumb thing Tucker says and pretend to greenlight it while offering a totally unrelated explanation rooted in science. Are we psychic? Yes, hunters can communicate with their eyes. No, Bret, are we psychic? Yes, my wife notices when I'm acting strangely. Bret, you little bitch, I asked if we are psychic and therefore God is real. If you want my followers, you have to dance like a little piggy.
Like the simplest explanation is the likely explanation. So my explanation for the creation of all things is God, who is not created, but only creates, created all things. Pretty simple.
No, it's not simple. It only seems simple to a simple-minded dunce like you. If you're uncomfortable with the universe simply existing, inventing an infinitely more complex entity to have created the universe, but refusing to explain why that entity exists, doesn't actually solve anything. It just makes the problem worse. The simplest explanation will always be the naturalistic one, end of story. It doesn't prove that no God exists, it just proves that you have zero access to basic logic, and your entire worldview is based on irrationality and fear. Bret already offered this precise rebuttal earlier in the conversation. Any changes to your position, champ?
Your explanation is what?
Well, let's put it this way. I've seen another version of this where you won't expect it. The many universes theory of quantum mechanics.
Yep.
You know this?
Yep.
So the basics are that in order to reconcile some of the oddities that quantum mechanics has discovered, we imagine that in every instant there is a universe spawned for every conceivable outgrowth. And so, you know, if I pick up this pen, there's a universe in which I didn't and a universe in which I did. Right. And those universes go on to do whatever they do, right?
You won't even see this much pivoting in an NBA game. The many worlds hypothesis has nothing to do with Tucker's dog shit argument for God, and Bret isn't even getting it right. It has to do with quantum events, superposition. Picking up a pen isn't a quantum event. He doesn't know what this hypothesis says, and he's treating it like some gospel within theoretical physics. It isn't. It is one of a multitude of interpretations of quantum mechanics.
My sense is when you say the simplest explanation is a creator who wasn't created, yeah, linguistically, that it doesn't get simpler than that. It's a one sentence, you know, and you're done. At the level of what it means, it's almost inconceivably. What does it mean for something capable of creating a universe not to have come into existence?
Right.
Right? I can't even imagine what that means, right?
Well, it is inconceivable. I mean, that's why you're the created, not the creator.
Bret managed to pivot back, and it's obviously a valid point, to which Tucker admits that what he believes is totally inconceivable, and then doubles down on it anyway. The universe needs a creator, but the creator doesn't need a creator because I say so. Astounding. Shall we get back to biology?
So here's I guess the other kind of thematic problem I have with thinking about everything in terms of evolution is that I don't think people are evolving.
Oh.
Human behavior, I mean, look, the written record doesn't go very far. The first legal code we have is Hammurabi's code, just a few thousand years old. But it's still a while.
Yep.
And a lot has happened in the ensuing thousands of years. And like, that's totally recognizable as a legal code to anyone who reads it.
Yep.
And, you know, people are just kind of the same as they have always been to the extent that we know how they have been.
Tucker's big gotcha to disprove evolutionary biology is that humans haven't evolved appreciably in a few thousand years. There's so much stupid to unpack here, it's hard to even know where to start. First of all, it's just wrong. Humans have evolved over that time span. It's fairly subtle, we're just talking about allele frequencies, but that's all evolution is. We can even point to more tangible characteristics like heightened ability to free dive or tolerate high altitudes, resistance to contagious diseases, lighter skin, blue eyes, lactase persistence, retention of the median artery, and a dozen other things. Tucker could just Google it and learn something, but that definitely will never happen. Equally important is his inability to comprehend how large-scale human civilization alters the way that natural selection applies to humans. That the weakest organisms are societally protected undermines the way natural selection normally operates, so evolution will occur in a modified way or via other mechanisms. And of course, 5,000 years is the blink of an eye in the context of evolutionary history to begin with, so this is an idiotic argument. Do you think Bret will teach Tucker an important lesson?
Right.
No, not at all.
Really?
Yeah, not at all.
In what ways have people evolved?
Well, so this is part of where I'm so frustrated with my field.
Yes.
Because the thing about evolution is Darwin nailed his part of the question. We narrowed his answer to something that is too crude to be generally functional. It works for certain things. It fails to explain other things consistently.
Bret tells Tucker he's wrong, and then instead of explaining how, he just whines about some fabricated failure of evolutionary biology. It's narrow and crude, you guys. Tucker is wrong, and I'm the smart science man, but also science is narrow and crude, and you are correct for hating it, brainwashed science deniers. I'm amazed that Bret hasn't referenced Dennis Noble yet.
So underlying all of this is a question, we don't need to get into this, but like, if there's no God, then how is there a moral code at all? Like, why can we say that it's better to raise a child than to kill a child? I still don't, I've never understood that. But
Yeah, atheists, if there's no God, why shouldn't I murder children? I will never get tired of this idiotic talking point. If you can't figure out why not murdering each other is in the best interest of all humans, you're a fucking moron.
There seems to be very little evidence that people are getting better. And so the Christian perspective is that people are captive to sin, to the influence of supernatural evil forces on them, which I think is like everyone's experience, by the way. You don't have to be a Christian to know that that's true.
Yes, you do have to be a brainwashed fundamentalist Christian to believe that very dumb brainwashing technique that is specific to Christianity. People don't do bad things because of magical evil forces, not even child molesting priests. They're just bad people, which proves that being devout doesn't make you a good person.
My question is deeper. Why do we all assume that life is better than death, that kindness is better than cruelty, that it's better to pass on your genes than to go extinct? I mean, these are all moral judgments that seem impossible in the absence of a God.
Me not wanting to die isn't impossible without a God, jackass. I like being alive and want to keep being alive for as long as possible. One day I will cease to exist, and so will everyone I know, and so will humanity in general, and so will the planet Earth, and so will the entire universe. But as long as things exist, there is potentiality, which has inherent value. My existence has value to me, even though your imaginary sky daddy isn't real, and morality, being a way to maximize that value for myself and everyone else, also does not require fictional characters. Try to wrap your head around that.
Right. I think that being confused into thinking life is great, I mean, what else is there, right? I'm all on board with it.
It makes it difficult to, I don't understand on what basis people make judgments about, say, murder if they don't believe that there's a higher power. I just don't get that.
Okay, I can see that you're never going to get it, and the only reason you don't murder people is because you fear punishment from your sky daddy, which means you're a gigantic piece of shit. We already knew that, but thanks for really crystallizing it for us.
Building a structure in which you can't get away with it increases the effectiveness of the moral point, right? If you have everybody calculating that it's morally, you should do the morally right thing if you are in a position to be observed. And if you're not in a position to be observed, then you should do whatever is most profitable, right? Civilization breaks down. If, on the other hand, you take a narrative and you say, nobody ever gets away with anything, it's being observed, it's being recorded, and it may be profitable in the short run, but there's an awful lot of punishment that will come later, right? Frankly, I don't even know if the sentence I just said is a religious narrative or a translation of game theory. It's the same thing.
It's definitely a religious narrative. The fundamentalist Christian God is Santa Claus for adults. He's watching you all the time and can see when you do naughty things, and you'll get punished for them, whether it's a lump of coal in your stocking or being tortured in a lake of fire forever. Again, this is part of the reason that religion exists, to scare immoral people into acting morally. In the 21st century, most of us shouldn't need it anymore, but here we are.
Right, and I would say that everything you're saying, which is complex, quite, is an argument for a creator, because the design is so brilliant as you're describing it.
Is your creationist bingo card filling up nicely? No, Tucker, complexity is not the hallmark of design. Simplicity is. Sentience is what allows us to design things that are simple to use. Complexity specifically points to blind naturalistic processes you know precisely nothing about. That's why there are so many biomolecules with multiple functions. That's why we have autoimmune diseases, painfully narrow birth canals, completely defenseless newborns, blind spots, male nipples, wisdom teeth, windpipes sharing openings with the esophagus, and genitals directly adjacent to our anuses. If humans were a high school science project, our designer would not get a passing grade.
If we talk about the behavior of a seedling, right? The seed is planted, it breaks open, it germinates, and the seedling rises against gravity and breaks the surface, and it puts out its 2 little solar panels. And at that point, it bends towards the sun. You could say, what is the other explanation for that other than a desire to reach the sunlight? And the answer is actually, in this case, we know the mechanism, and it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But it's not desire.
But it expresses a value, though. And the value is life is better than death.
It expresses...
To exist is better than not to.
Yes, it expresses an objective, but not a desire.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's a semantic question. I don't know. I see a huge difference between the two, but
the difference is that desire requires sentience, Tuck. Plants aren't sentient. Bret made a decent point, not really directly pertinent to the concept of design, but it at least shows how a lack of knowledge of biology can lead to false beliefs about the nature of living organisms. We do indeed understand plant hormones and the mechanisms by which they induce things like phototropism and gravitropism, as I've covered in the botany series. What one could ascribe to sentience is actually due to biochemistry. Tuck is supposed to realize that by extension, what one could ascribe to divinity is just some other thing he doesn't understand. Shockingly, he doesn't make the connection.
Love is a profoundly, I'm struggling for words even good enough to describe it, is a profoundly transformative property of life that is as close to a North Star as a human being can have. And I don't mean just romantic love, familial love, love of country, all of these things. Love is this tremendously powerful force. Now let us say there's actually a lot of neurochemistry that we can describe relative to love. Which story do I want people living by? Oh, definitely the narrative one in which you just simply surrender to the power of this thing and you allow it to be a guide. That's definitely, I don't want to live amongst people who view love as just a bunch of chemical reactions, yada, 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 right? That's a horrifying dystopia. But it doesn't make it untrue that love is mediated through neurochemistry.
So love is chemistry, but I don't want to live in the horrifying dystopia where we acknowledge that love is chemistry. This is Bret pandering to people who believe that love is an expression of divinity, and all those stupid scientists with their reductionist molecule stuff will just never get it, man. Do you see how Bret plays both sides? Posturing as the academic and gesturing towards concrete scientific mechanisms, but then denigrating those who acknowledge and disseminate them in order to win points with willfully ignorant Tucker fans who are actively hostile towards scientific information.
Yeah, why can't both be true? That doesn't.
They are. That's exactly my point. That's exactly my point.
Right.
They are both true.
But only one describes the purpose of it, the origin of it.
Only one is useful for a living.
No, but I'm saying the theist believes he understands why this is happening.
Right.
The atheist has no idea.
And of course, Tucker has it precisely backwards. Discovering the biochemical mechanisms by which emotions occur is specifically explaining how and why they are happening. The people who say, "Me not know, therefore God," are the ones that are deluding themselves. Just wanted to clear that up.
There's a kind of nuance that has become impossible. And I'm trying to make a point to the atheists about what they've failed at and why they're not reaching lots of people and why they're losing ground. And I'm also trying to make a point to the theological folks about Darwinism and about the utility of figuring out how to reconcile these things rather than view them as competing explanations.
Ah yes, good old Bret the centrist, taking those stupid atheists to task. Hey Bret, atheists aren't failing at anything because they're not out there proselytizing. We don't care about what religious people do as long as they aren't trying to violate the separation of church and state. And by absolutely any metric imaginable, it's religion that's failing as society secularizes at record speed. So no, atheists are not losing ground despite the fact that that we're not some kind of club looking to recruit. It's very obvious what you're doing, and throwing in a line about Darwinism isn't going to change that.
Do you know who Sam Harris is?
Yeah, I do know Sam.
And I think he seems smart, and I think he clearly is smart. But there's something, I watched I don't know him really, but I saw a video of him once taking up the atheist cause. And it's not up to me to like help the atheists sell their program because I disagree with it. But I remember thinking, man, if I was an atheist, I'd be very upset that Sam Harris was carrying my atheist water because I felt like he was a very bad spokesman for his cause.
Okay, Tuck. While there are a handful of issues with Sam Harris, he's an intellectual titan compared to you, as were the other so-called new atheists. But Bret has a bone to pick with Sam, so let's allow him to get this off his chest.
Sam was a friend of mine. He became very disturbed during COVID about my stance as a COVID dissident and refused to talk to me about it. Frankly, I invited him multiple times and he refused to have the conversation. But he, I think, must have earnestly believed that my position was putting people in danger, and he viewed it as a moral failing. He had several podcasts on the subject. He accused me of being out of my depth, even though I'm an evolutionary biologist and evolution is highly relevant to all of the topics included in COVID.
Bret, you're not an evolutionary biologist. We've been over this. But even if you were, no, being an evolutionary biologist is absolutely not the same as being a virologist or immunologist or epidemiologist or any of the other professions that would be directly applicable to COVID. So that was a dumb thing to say. You were never qualified to contradict any aspect of medical science. But more importantly, Sam distanced himself from you because you went absolutely insane and started pushing ridiculously transparent disinformation during the pandemic, as I outlined in my Weinstein Brothers debunk. You spread lies about COVID vaccines. You pushed the ivermectin insanity, which led directly to a number of people dying of COVID that followed you voraciously. You even began pushing HIV denialism, saying that AIDS is not caused by a virus. You're a disgusting, grifting piece of crap who poisons society with lies, and Sam has enough intellectual integrity to make it known that he wants nothing to do with you. Cry about it.
In any way, he portrayed me as incapable, and when I had expert guests, people like Pierre Corey and Robert Malone on my channel to talk about these things, unarguable experts, people with fantastic credentials, he literally dismissed them as possibly schizophrenic, that would be an explanation for their dissident status.
So low.
I know. Can you believe it, Tucker? Sam Harris doesn't take massive frauds like Pierre Corey and Robert Malone seriously. Pierre is the one Bret got all his ivermectin bullshit from, and Robert is the asshole who was ranting all over the internet about how he's the one who invented mRNA vaccine technology, which he objectively didn't, and we all have to listen to him about how dangerous they are. He's also been handpicked by RFK to join CDC's new Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, because reality is a nightmare. So you'll hear more about him in the RFK debunk, since he really sucks a lot. What else should these jerks fumble? Maybe the Middle East? Why not? This is propaganda, isn't it?
The state of Israel is, even though it's like, okay, Jews finally have a homeland, right? On the other hand, look where that homeland is. It's like a ghetto in, a neighborhood of others.
Yes.
Israel is a ghetto in a neighborhood of others. Israel is a settler colonial state built on displacing indigenous people to steal their land and natural resources. It's an industrial nuclear superpower built with Western money under the false pretense of giving Jews an ethno-state that nobody should have in the first place. Got any other hot takes?
And anti-Semitism is a recurrent fact of history, so you can imagine that it structures the mindset of people, even in a long period of peace. There's always the question of, well, when is that bad pattern going to return?
Yes, sound the anti-Semitism alarm. Israel is bombing the shit out of everyone around them and murdering children by the tens of thousands because they're worried about all the anti-Semitism. Good call, Bret.
You can understand a hardline position that is not so interested in hearing about, peace, love, and understanding because it thinks that the realities of a world in which Jews are constantly being displaced, or which the tendency to displace them reemerges recurrently.
Right.
Jews are constantly being displaced. They're the ones doing the displacing, dumbass. Every year, more and more Jewish people head over to Israel from fucking New Jersey or wherever else and get a free house that was just freshly stolen from Palestinians in the West Bank via settler operations that are illegal under international law. Keep it coming, asshole.
The problem is that the world needs the upgrade. If we continue to play that lineage against lineage violence game as a planet, there's not going to be anything left.
Zionism isn't an upgrade, Bret. It's the defect. Zionism is the last gasp of barbaric colonialism and ethnic cleansing that Europeans have been enacting for centuries. It's what Cortez did to the Aztecs. It's what British colonists did to Native Americans. And it's what European Jews are doing to Palestinians today. Zionism is the lineage against lineage violence game that you are describing, and the only humane stance is to call for its complete and total dismantling.
And if we allow neocons, hardliners, to drag us, and by us, I mean the U.S., into a war with Iran, then we are effectively agreeing to step back into the Old Testament rules, which will be fatal for humanity.
It kind of sounds like you support cutting off all financial support to Israel, Bret. You should come out and say that.
Okay, people have views on Israel. Okay, great. But why is that the issue that I think is really fracturing Trump's coalition? I mean, I just see it every single day. Everyone's more upset about that than anything going on in the United States. Like, it feels like sabotage. Maybe it's organic. Like, what are we watching here?
You're watching genocide, Tucker. You are watching the first day-to-day, minute-to-minute, internationally televised genocide in human history, while its perpetrators demand praise and safe spaces. It's gaslighting on a level nobody has ever seen before. Nothing happening in the United States holds a candle to the sheer brutality and immorality being inflicted there, and that's why everyone is talking about it all the time. Because genocide is bad, and any political fracturing you think you're referencing is due to internal pressures between people who support genocide and people who condemn it. Maybe stop both sidesing a genocide and get on the right side of history here, boys.
But it doesn't, if you had asked me 5 years ago, what will be like the most passionate debate in the United States at a moment where we're probably in recession and have more homeless people than ever, suicide rates up, life expectancy, we have all these problems, debt overhang that is going to crush us. What's going to be the issue that people are going to be the maddest about? Some far away Middle Eastern country with 10 million people. Like, really?
Yes, really, Tucker. People with even the slightest shred of empathy tend to get pretty worked up about genocide, especially when their tax dollars are funding it. And guess what? If you want to be a selfish piece of shit and fixate on recession, you should be especially upset about the fact that the United States gives billions upon billions of dollars to Israel for the purpose of murdering children instead of taking care of domestic issues. See how all of these things are related, big guy?
My position is resolutely America first.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Because I'm an American, and it's not that I'm glad that there is a state of Israel.
Yeah.
I wish it well, but our primary responsibility as Americans has to be to America.
You well wish the genocidal settler colonial state? That's not a good look. But this America First crap is also a cop-out, since everything people like you and Tucker pretend to love about America is inextricably linked with its imperialist foreign policy. You're talking about promoting peace while rooting for the Empire from Star Wars. So you love Western belligerence whether you publicly admit it or not.
You've got two sides that have inherited a it's us or them mentality over a piece of habitat that isn't getting any more fertile. And then you have an alternative mode. The alternative mode is to sign up for the new way of producing wealth that actually forces the weaponry to be shelved and coexistence to occur. And hopefully that coexistence then becomes the ability to collaborate.
Coexistence was already occurring, Bret. Jews and Christians were living in Palestine alongside Muslims prior to the formation of Israel, and everything was just fine. Zionism was never about a safe haven for Jews. It was about European powers establishing a base in the Middle East for resource extraction and destabilization of neighboring states. Zionist militias going village to village in the late 1940s, executing people and stealing their homes, was not about coexistence. The Nakba was not about coexistence. The 1967 war and the illegal settlements that have occurred on a daily basis ever since are not about coexistence. Ongoing occupation and apartheid is not about coexistence. It is ethnic cleansing and land theft. That is what Israel represents.
I'm just fascinated by the dominance of this conversation in American politics. Like, what?
Because Zionists dominate American politics, genius. AIPAC is one of the biggest lobbies in Washington, if not the single biggest. Every president since World War II has been completely beholden to Israel's interests, and none of them can manage to disengage from its financial support. If you don't like that, then start voicing your disdain for Zionism. So what do you morons think of Netanyahu?
It's not just the Israeli people who are jeopardized by his leadership. It's, I believe, Jews in the diaspora. I feel
You're exactly right.
The goodwill that existed towards Jews in the aftermath of World War II is being burned up at an incredible rate. I don't expect to see it return in my lifetime.
Yeah, when we're listing all the groups of people that suffer at the hands of Bibi's leadership, we should think of Israeli Jews first, and then Jews in other places second. Those are clearly the groups of people that suffer the most under Bibi. Let's skip right over all the tens of thousands of Palestinian children who have been completely vaporized, and then the tens of thousands more who are orphaned and missing limbs, and then the million or so more that are living in tents, starving to death, and plagued with insurmountable fear and severe trauma. No need to mention them at all, right?
I think it is time for the West to reassert itself and its values, to police our own behavior. Frankly, I'm not happy when the United States falls down on its commitment to a level playing field.
I agree.
But that really is the road forward, and in the end, it's better for everybody.
You keep pretending that the West is the good guy here, and it's just infantile. The West doesn't need to reassert itself or any of its values. Its values are precisely the murderous tendencies you're pretending to want to eradicate. This round of ethnic cleansing is just business as usual for the Western powers, and that is what needs to be put aside. What's better for everybody is for the West to stop being the West and for imperialism to die. And on that note, there's not much else to cover. There's a brief section where Bret spews his favorite lies about COVID vaccines, and then a little chunk at the end, potentially fear-mongering about AI, which I don't really have the capacity to address. So we can just wrap it up here. Oh, except for Tucker's little outro. That's too hilarious to skip.
So it turns out that YouTube is suppressing this show. On one level, that's not surprising. That's what they do. But on another level, it's shocking. With everything that's going on in the world right now, all the change taking place in our economy and our politics, with the wars we're on the cusp of fighting right now, Google has decided you should have less information rather than more.
Yes, Tucker, YouTube is totally suppressing your show. That's why this video has close to 1 million views and your channel has over 4 million subscribers. But right, no matter how popular you are and how much money you make, you'll always be the gritty underdog being censored by the big bad system. Right, Tuck?
And that is totally wrong. It's immoral. What can you do about it? Well, we could whine about it. That's a waste of time. We're not in charge of Google. Or we could find a way around it, a way that you could actually get information that is true, not intentionally deceptive. The way to do that on YouTube, we think, is to subscribe to our channel. Subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to be notified when we upload and share this video. That way you'll have a much higher chance of hearing actual news and information. So we hope that you'll do that.
Well, you just lied to everyone about YouTube suppressing your content, so I think we know how much your word is worth. Your channel is the antithesis of actual news and information. It's just you telling willfully ignorant morons all the lies they're dying to hear. Cool guitar solo though, asshole. Anyway, in case anybody needed to be reminded what worthless frauds both of these guys are, I hope that helped. Tucker is genuinely a complete imbecile, and he is grifting off of other even dumber people by providing a never-ending stream of confirmation bias and lies that make people feel special. Bret is obviously smarter than Tucker, but his game is no less dishonest. His whole persona, the super smart scientist thinker that used to be liberal but is now a Trump supporter, just reeks of the same podcast-based cash grab being enacted by every Rogan sphere-adjacent pseudo-intellectual on the internet. He came on Tucker's show to poach his audience by supporting their delusions, posturing as the one academic they can trust, because he greenlights their blind faith and their politics, and I'm sure it worked out just fine for him. How long will people keep falling for frauds like these? Probably longer than I'll be alive, sadly, but let's see what happens. So that's it for Bret and Tucker's cute little meeting of the minds. Tucker is a little too pointless to continue highlighting with any regularity, but the Weinstein brothers haven't seen the last of me, so stay tuned for more on Bret and Eric in the near future. Until next time.